Welcome to Talk to Brazil with Tom Rioch, the business connector to business in Brazil. Welcome to Talk to Brazil, the business connection, the world's first English language internet radio program about business in Brazil, now in podcast format. A professional business network is made up of people we meet every day. Our network grows and is sustained by maintaining contact with those connections. Podcasting is networking. I'm Tom Rioch, an American in Brazil for many years and known as the King of Networking, a speaker and author on networking. I'm talking from the city of Campinas, the state of São Paulo, Brazil, so when you talk to Tom, you talk to Brazil and the world. Today's guest is Daniel Mourao, and he's talking to us from Salvador, Bahia. Daniel Mourao is the founder and CEO of Go Brazil. He majored and is a graduate in international trade with an MBA in marketing and specialization in international trade management in connection with the Massachusetts Institute and as well as Agrocomex. He has more than 20 years of experience in international trade, working with many companies and providing large industries such as Hewlett-Packard, Thomson Reuters, 3M, and Braskem. And he's been an entrepreneur since 2015. Sells some products sourced from China through his e-commerce platforms. He is also a teacher at Agrocomex of several courses related to international trade. And again, as founder and CEO of Go Brazil, Go Brazil is the first YouTube channel that links soccer to international trade of goods and services. So with that, hello, Daniel, and welcome to Talk to Brazil.
Hello, Tom. Good morning. Thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here talking with you and your listeners from Talk to Brazil.
Just as an update for our listeners, Daniel and I, we met several months ago and several times in succession at the Forum of Internationalization of Companies here in Campinas, which is an event which is promoted by Leonardo Ciroli. And I've also already interviewed Daniel on my Portuguese podcast, which is BBN Brazil. So, and during our visits, I mentioned, and this is the day that I said, well, Daniel, once you launch Go Brazil in English, we'll be talking to you. So today's the day.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just launched the English version this week, right?
Yes. This last Monday, I launched a very quick introduction video in English to talk about Go Brazil, what is the idea, and to show that Brazil is not good only in samba and soccer.
Right.
This idea that the world has that we are good. In fact, we are good in these two aspects, but I think we have much more to offer, and so that was the idea that I had to make this introduction video, and then from now on the idea is to share more videos in a weekly basis, talking about Go Brazil. In fact, that is can I start talking about Go Brazil?
Yeah, we've mentioned that, and I mentioned that on my other podcast and with other persons even in Talk to Brazil, that Brazil has so many opportunities. But as I've seen, and Brazil still is a great unknown for most foreigners and most foreign companies when they're looking for these opportunities. So and I commend you for that, the opportunity to promote Brazil in English helps these people understand better what the country is all about.
Yes, exactly, because this is something that our government also is changing a lot in these terms. They are more worried about the exposure of Brazil to the world, to open our economy to other countries, because we are one of the most closed countries in the world, let's say, in terms of economic relations.
Right.
So that's the actual agenda of our government, and then Go Brazil was created with the same idea. I mixed two passions that I have, that is soccer that I am addicted since I was born. So I have more than 40 years of experience playing, following. My son and my daughter also plays. So it's a passion that I have and something that I always follow. And international trade, that is my other passion. I've worked for more than 20 years in this area. So I had this idea to mix these two things, where in each episode I will talk about a team or a national team, talk some interesting information about the city or the country of that team, and finish with the most important for the channel, that is to indicate export opportunities for Brazilian products to those cities or those countries. So that's the idea. In Portuguese, I already had already launched a lot of videos talking about international teams like Barcelona, Liverpool, and national teams like Argentina, and so on. But now the idea is to talk in English about Brazilian teams.
Mm-hmm. So and Brazilian cities, right?
In Brazilian cities, exactly. So, for example, I'm in Salvador right now, so I'm going to talk about Bahia team, for example, and say about the team, about the city, that is Salvador, and also and finish with the most important that I said, that is to indicate products from Salvador region that can be exported to the world. So it's a way to people around the world to know about the team, about the city. Also can bring tourists for the city, for example. It's not the main idea of the channel, but can contribute for this as well. And most importantly, to know about which products that city can offer to the world. That, as you said, sometimes the people outside Brazil don't know about the products that we can offer to them. Only the most famous ones like cachaça or sugar, orange juice, and these these ones are the most famous that everybody knows outside the country, but we have much more to offer, I think. So that's the idea.
Well, speaking, as you mentioned, Salvador. Many people know Salvador Bahia, again, from the carnival, from the different samba tradition. So it is obviously a very important tourist attraction. The state of Bahia is a tourist attraction. But many people don't realize that in Salvador is also a petrochemical center. It's an automotive manufacturing center. There's a lot of technology and innovation in the area. But I think the point that you mentioned, even attracting the tourist, many tourists are business owners or business persons. Yeah. And the more that they could come, obviously, dancing in the street's fantastic. I've done it and I recommend it to everybody. Yeah. It's also the opportunity to understand what else is available. That in Salvador, in Bahia, as the rest of Brazil, there's business everywhere.
Yes.
There are consumers everywhere. There are suppliers everywhere. There's manufacturers everywhere. There's all kinds of different products. When you get into the export of fruits, right? There are many local fruits that exist here that many people outside of Brazil don't even realize that they are, and many of them are exported.
Yeah, exact fruits that are only here in Brazil, only here in Brazil. So, yeah, as you said, Bahia, for example, is the top cellulose exporter from the country and one of the world top cellulose exporters. So I don't know if people outside Brazil knows about this information. So yeah, that's the idea, to show to Brazilian people also. Sometimes Brazilian people also don't know about all the potential that our regions have and all the the products that we can offer here internally in our national market, but also the people outside Brazil that can be aware of all the opportunities that we have here.
No, that's true. We mentioned that before, that we're talking here about the region of Campinas where we've met several times. Mm-hmm. Many Brazilians don't understand what Campinas is all about. Sometimes they think it's just a neighborhood of São Paulo.
Yes.
So I think that the more information that can get out for Brazilians in Portuguese, for foreign persons, the global connections in English really helps. Now, yes. You mentioned, and I mentioned, that you already have business with Chinese companies through the United States, and that's one of the things that we've talked about at mm-hmm. the forums here of internationalization of companies. The definite increase of Chinese companies coming to Brazil and investing. That's the other side of it. It's not only exporting or importing. Companies mm-hmm. coming here and establishing themselves here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, China is present worldwide. So I read yesterday that they are, let's say, importing technologies and all the know-how from French vineyards to start producing good wines in China. So who could believe in like 10 years ago that China will be producing and exporting wine in the same quality as the French ones? So yeah, they are really present in everywhere. And as you said, they are looking for and seeking for all these opportunities here in Brazil, all the investments that needs to be done in terms of infrastructure and all the other ones, industries and so on. And they are just hungry for all these opportunities.
And what I've seen, and you have more than I probably, they also have a keen interest on the culture. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the Chinese have a very important culture themselves, but we've seen in recent years, and going back talking about soccer, about football, the Chinese and the Chinese football teams have been importers of Brazilian players, have been importers of Brazilian coaches,
yes.
Send many young Chinese here
mm-hmm.
To practice and to play and to understand the game of soccer,
to observe
and the importance
well.
of soccer in the culture and even doing business in Brazil.
Exactly. Yeah. You brought up a very interesting point on that. Is they are really doing that. They have observers around Brazil to see young talents that are coming and to live to bring them to China. And this is an interesting thing because in 2018, I already brought this information to you, but for the people here to understand, Brazil contributed with almost 10% of all exported players around the world. Let's say exported in quotes because it's expatriated players.
Mm-hmm.
So for all the 147 most important soccer leagues around the world, almost 10% were from Brazilian players. But the same thing in international trade does not happen. We contributed with only a little bit more than 1% of all the international trade around the world in 2018. So 8 times less than what we did with soccer. So that's the idea of the channel, to link, to bring a passion, Brazilian and world passion that is soccer, just to make the issue a little bit more light, but to mark this internalization issue as a very important thing for Brazil to be more respectable in this point, you know.
Yeah, but even from a business standpoint and business relations, it's extremely important for foreign persons when they do come to Brazil, even on a business trip, to understand this passion about soccer that you mentioned. It's almost impossible. I've been part of many meetings between persons coming. I think it's impossible to have a business meeting and people not talk about soccer.
Yeah.
People not talk about their team.
Exactly.
People not talk of showing pictures of their favorite player, or, as you mentioned and you do, wearing the national team's shirt or the local team's shirt.
Yes.
And for a foreign person coming, you have to understand that that's a passion.
Yeah.
My recommendation to persons coming, and that's my personal way of working here in Brazil, when people ask me, what is your favorite team? I've decided that I don't have a favorite team. I will never admit which team I like.
Really?
Never.
Yeah.
Because once you admit it, you don't know what the other person's favorite team is. Here in Campinas, and you know the city. Here we have two major teams. Yeah. In Salvador, you have several teams. São Paulo, you have many teams in the city. People of Salvador, they have their local team in Salvador, but they probably also follow a team in São Paulo, which could be the Palmeiras or Corinthians or São Paulo or somebody else, right?
Yes.
So they have multiple passions, right? A local passion, a national passion in terms of, let's say, regional, but they also have the country team, right?
Yes.
And each one of them has a different degree of passion.
Yeah.
But they're passionate.
And
so in a business meeting, most business persons will talk about all of them, right?
Yeah.
My local team in Bahia, the team I follow in São Paulo, even the as you mentioned, the team in Barcelona or UK, because their favorite local player has now been transferred or has been bought by somebody else, so they follow teams in the UK and China, United States. So Brazilians follow soccer everywhere, and that becomes the part of conversation. It's the beginning of conversation.
Yeah, to break the ice in the beginning or in the end of the meeting, all the time we talk about soccer for sure. But as I said, this first video that I launched this week. I included a video from our Ministry of Infrastructure here.
Yes, I saw that.
From the new government, that they brought a lot of interesting information about the country that some of them even I was not aware. So we are the second largest corn exporter, the second largest iron exporter, the top coffee exporter, the top sugar exporter, the top chicken exporter. But even though we contribute with only that a little bit more than 1% of all the amount that the world exports. So we have much more to do. We are talking here about most of them are basic products, so we must export in more quantity industrial products. Most of the ones that we export are commodities that are in stock exchange markets, so we cannot play with different prices and so on. So yeah, that's the idea. The channel was created like with a funny and very light mode,
right?
But in fact, my main concern is to really let all the Brazilian entrepreneurship and all the industries and so on, the companies, to be more prepared, to have a culture of being international,
right?
Not depend only on the Brazilian market. We are huge. That this is a point, it's fact, but that's not all. We have much more to explore. We have the new agreement with European Union that is hitting the door to start. So it's the time to change.
Lots of opportunities coming for everybody.
Yes, exactly. Not export only when Brazil is in crisis. and the local market is
right.
is recovering. We need to make this as a culture, Tom.
That's it. Well, just to remind our listeners again about the passion. The Brazilians are as passionate about soccer as they are about their companies, their products, their country. So that passion does extend. And regarding the soccer, you mentioned yourself as a child, your children.
Mm-hmm.
When a child is born, the first present that they get is a soccer ball.
Yes.
Or a soccer ball and a team shirt.
Yes, exactly. My son was dressed. He left the baby, the maternity, dressed with a soccer t-shirt already. So
that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And you might even ask the doctor which team he roots for before you let him operate him, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's very important to know prior.
But that's Brazil. I want to congratulate you again, Daniel, for bringing and taking more information to the world about the opportunities, about Brazil on the cultural side, and sharing your experience in international trade, both in English on Go Brazil as well as Portuguese. So it works both sides to help Brazilians understand the cities and the countries outside and what are the advantages and opportunities, as you do for the foreigners to understand what the opportunities are here. So, again, so my favorite team, again, is teamwork. So,
yeah, teamwork, yeah. It's a good one as well. Yeah.
Okay, and have a team of many persons that you know throughout the world or many companies and bringing that all together, that's where you can make your goal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the teamwork that we are inside is very good. The forum, the internationalization, the company's internationalization forum from Leonardo is very good. So we are in a good place already.
And a good team, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So again, congratulations. Look forward to seeing you again here in Campinas or elsewhere and talking more about your success. And we'll certainly help you promote the Go Brazil both in Portuguese and in English, all right?
Yes, thank you so much, Tom, again for the invitation, the opportunity to be here and talking with all the listeners from Talk to Brazil about what is our country and that showing again that we are not good only in samba and soccer. We are very good in samba and soccer, but we have much more to offer too.
Certainly.
Yeah. Sure.
And just reminding our audience that the YouTube channel is Go Brazil. That's Go, and you look for Brazil, Brazil, right?
Yes, exactly.
And you'll find it and be able to find all of the YouTube videos that he's placed and then continue to place. All right?
Yes, yeah. The first 15 first ones are in Portuguese. That is what you said, to let people here from Brazil know about the opportunities in other countries. But we already have one in English, launched this week. And from now on, we have much more in English as well, talking about Brazilian teams and the opportunities here in Brazil to the world.
And someday I'm sure you'll be launching one in Mandarin. So
yeah. I listened to your very good interview with the lady, and it's not it's easy. She said that it's easy, but I need to take the first step first because.
The idea of that, and for our listeners, we're talking about Mandarin, but if you talk about Mandarin, most people that I meet and say, well, I think you should learn Mandarin, they say, well, it's impossible. It's really just to change the mindset of the word impossible.
Yes.
We see that with Brazilian companies. Say, well, you could someday export to the UK or to the United States, or export to China, or export to Africa. But many people think it's impossible. And we know that it isn't. So it's just to try to change that mindset, to get away from the words difficult and impossible and focus on easy.
Yes.
All right. And there's a process for anything. If I was able to learn and speak Portuguese and you were able to learn and speak English, it's hard to say that those were impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a process, there's a way, there's help, there's methodology, as in any language.
Yeah.
And the more you use a language and understand the culture, there are more Chinese learning English than there are people in the United States, for example.
Yeah.
So to understand cultures, and in Brazil, if somebody has the time and patience to learn Portuguese, that's the way to do business here.
Yeah, and Portuguese is not easy for people that
yeah, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, right? It's not impossible. Exactly. Just we need to take the first step and then go on.
Okay.
Cool.
So again, thanks for taking part, and congratulations again on your Go Brazil in English.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Okay, and also like to invite our listeners and invite everyone to visit our website, which is talktobrazil.com. That's TALK, the number 2, BRAZIL.com. Well, you'll find today's interview with Daniel Mourao, and his last name is Mourao. Also links to his LinkedIn profile as well as the YouTube channel Go Brazil. You can also find this and our previous shows of Talk to Brazil on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, TuneIn, Himalaya, and many others. And thank you, our audience, and remind everyone that today's program was brought to us by Focus MI Market Intelligence. And Focus MI specializes in market research for the Brazilian agricultural market. And more about them on their site, which is FOCUSMI.com. Goodbye, and thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Tom Rioch on Talk to Brazil, the business connector to Brazil.